Hello and welcome to the show. For this week's FailRace versus the community, we were going racing with cars from the showroom rally division. However, not built to the homologation spec. Instead, we built them to B class. An interesting selection of rally cars in this lot. We've got some more classic rear-wheel drive vehicles and a bit more modern all-wheel drive cars competing together. Unfortunately, a Galant would get himself with a sim steering twitch across a curb and spin in front of the rest of the pack. No, not too many casualties in all of that, but yeah, did make a bit of a mess for the rest of us to have to try and avoid. At the front, it was two Volvos that were leading the way with a Renault Alpine in the middle, and Evo 6 trying desperately to cling on to the back of them. The Volvos, mighty fast in terms of straight line speed. The Evo, not quite so much. I think one of the Volvos certainly was powered with a V8 engine swap, making it, yeah, pretty damn quick down the straights. The Alpine, of course, fast through the corners. You can see the gap the Evo is struggling with. I had gone for a Subaru Legacy. I should say, Forza replays, for whatever reason, have now stopped showing liveries, unless it is the replay, unless it's your replay, and it will show your car livery. Other than that, it won't show anybody's livery. So, fun times. My replay had a couple of cars missing, hence why I'm using somebody else's. Yeah, it's the replays save better now, just don't save with liveries for whatever reason. Either way, I was struggling a little bit with my Legacy, certainly around this Brands Hatch circuit. The all-wheel drive cars were not the way to go, shall we say. Whether it be struggling a little bit in terms of PI, not really quite able to make the most of their strengths, they weren't doing particularly well. I was finding myself fighting with an Impreza, having gone for a cutback on the exit of turn 3. I managed to keep my car on the inside for turn 4. In the end, the other Subaru just runs out of grip, trying to hold it a long way round. I would get the position, but in terms of lap times, I didn't have too much to fight with the cars further up. Evo 6 was struggling a little bit for pace here as he started to, well, have some Subarus for company. So a big slide on the exit of that final corner. You don't want to wheel on the grass down there, particularly up towards the first corner. Not the easiest place to get passes done down here. It's a nasty corner. You can often get yourself in trouble launching across the curb or running wide into that gravel trap on the exit. Everyone, though, making it through this time around as the Impreza would move up a position. The Evo quick through the corners, but was struggling to have much to fight the other cars with when it came to the acceleration zones. One of the vehicles that was absolutely flying was a Fiat 131, had been caught up in the avoiding of a spinning Galant and dropped a fair way down, but it was mighty quick around this Brands Hatch circuit as he picked his way up through the field, fighting against an Escort Cosworth. Now, the Ford a little bit better through the turns, could just about fend off the Fiat when it came to these corners, but the Fiat could stay close. It could stay close through the corners. It wasn't that much worse, and then as soon as it gets to any decent-sized straight, the 131 has got that power. So as we leave turn 3, yeah, he's a little bit too far back to try anything on the Escort. You're not going to be able to have a dive, certainly not on the better handling car, the better slowing down car, if you like, through turn 4, but all the Fiat has to do is be close enough as they now approach this back straight, and the speed of that 131 is pretty bloody incredible as that'll go sailing past. It is well clear by the time we get to the next braking zone. Of course, cars like that are not necessarily the easiest of things to drive. You've got to keep it together through the corners. But, yeah, it wouldn't be long before the Fiat would make its way up into what was now a 4th place, going hunting for a podium with a 205. Impressively non-twitchy 205 up ahead. They're notoriously difficult to build in Forza games. And this one, you know, had a bit of straight line speed about it. It's just not quite enough to fend off that mighty Fiat, although he's going to give it a damn good try as he goes around the outside, keeps his car alongside, but it isn't quite enough. Goes for a cutback on the exit down towards the next corner. Got to try and compete with that 131's acceleration, and in the end, it's not going to be enough. The Fiat actually turns in a little bit too soon, almost gets himself in trouble across the top of the hill. All of this fighting for 3 or 4 corners has allowed the Escort to catch up and join in the back of that little group. Now the 131 is clear, should be safe coming into the final corner on this particular lap, and can get away from the angry little group. I, having lost a place to the Impreza, fell back a little bit until I found some speed in my Legacy. I guess I was just driving it slightly differently, and then sort of latched back onto the tail of the Impreza. The Evo 6 was starting to plummet and struggle as he fell down the order, and in the end it was another car to go exploring out wide, losing 3 places in that particular incident. Unfortunate, the Evo 6 had done a good job of clinging on to places, but yeah, just ran out of grip, and it was my turn to start putting the Impreza under increasing amounts of pressure, but difficult to find any ways past. The Volvo behind us was the quicker car, but was having some real issues riding across the curbs, spinning the car sideways, and hence how he fell back down the order. I was, yeah, continuing to kind of harry the Impreza, but wasn't able to get close enough in any of the important areas. Pretty evenly matched, really, my Legacy and the Impreza in terms of acceleration, in terms of grip through the corners, and then I had to start worrying about a Volvo sniffing around, looking for a way past it. In the end, yeah, I couldn't do too much about that Subaru. At the front, it would be another Volvo that would go on to take a relatively comfortable victory for the 242. You can see in the background it was an Alpine that was in second. It was, yeah, a fairly comfortable margin. No one really had much of an answer to the Volvo, certainly not in terms of its straight line speed and still being bloody good around the corners. The Alpine, I think, the slightly faster car around the turns, but as soon as it got to a straight, couldn't compete with the mighty V8 Volvo. So our podium, Stinty Boy 500 with Volvo taking victory. Time to Die Zombie in second with that Alpine, and F1 Kieran in third with the Fiat 131. Race number 2, and we would head to the Sebring Club Circuit. My Legacy getting a good start amongst the rear-wheel drive cars. Actually ended up across the grass at some point there to make pass work. It did, though. We managed to squeeze the Subaru past and still found enough traction out on the dirt to make our way off of the line. There was a fair few Volvos around in this one, and I immediately had one of those abaths for company, which was not quite what I wanted to see in the rear view mirror. Now, this circuit, bit more suitable, it turned out, for the Legacy. This was very much a midfield car in the first race. It was okay, but it never would likely threaten the top running cars. Around here, the Subaru had actually got a little bit more speed. I found myself still having to try my best to fend off a very, very quick Abarth, making that 131 go the long way round where I could. Then got a little bit crowded with a Volvo up ahead. They're not the smallest of cars, and a little bit boxed in, and the Fiat with a better run off of the corner is able to draw up alongside. Fiat does have to go a long way round the final turn, but it's got the grip and got the speed to make that one work. However, I would find myself in about 4th place after all of that. Not too bad a start for a Legacy that had quite struggled at Brands Hatch. I wasn't too disappointed with that particular start as we all run into the first corner. There was another Volvo for company behind, as it would be an Opel Manta that would lead the way. Further back, it was plenty busy once more, as you would expect on these opening laps. Interesting selections of vehicle in this particular race. One of the Quattros in the background is, well, very Quattro-esque in its way of taking that final corner, most of it sideways and on the grass. Got away with all of that as we head down the start-finish straight here. The Galant having a decent amount of straight-line speed. We get up the inside of an Escort. The Ford very quick through the turns, but was really struggling with that straight-line speed. He's just a sitting duck at the end of the straight with that one. The Quattro trying to buy into all of that. Couldn't quite make it work. A little bit of a tag between the pair of them. Everybody survives out the other side. The Galant actually flying up towards the back of the red Quattro here, but is not quite able, thinks about it, but it's a very, very difficult place, or a very difficult manoeuvre he would have had to have done to have got that one. As that group continued to fight in the background, a Renault Alpine had got itself free of the struggles and was trying to work his way up through the order from a lower starting position on the grid, making a move stick on the Subaru Impreza. The Alpine, being so very light and having an awful lot of grip through these corners, was a formidable car to have to try and defend from. It might not quite have the straight line speed of some of the Volvos and some of the other cars, but it was so much faster through the corners that lack of straight line speed didn't really seem to, I say lack, it was keeping up with a lot of them. The very fastest cars, no, but it could keep up with a lot of the vehicles and then be faster through the turns. The Volvo did its best to defend the inside, through turn 1, and then it's just a simple cutback from the Alpine to draw alongside. Can't quite complete the pass as of yet. The Volvo will fight back down these straights, but the Volvo is going to be on the awkward line into the next corner, and the Alpine is just so much better on the brakes, even with a big slide from the Renault. That would move him up into a third place and go hunting after Meat that was sat in second and the Manta that was currently leading the way. This little group of vehicles, the Abarth and a Volvo, got tangled together, and hence why they dropped down through the field. Once more, it was a Fiat having to try and make his way through the pack, and the Fiats were proving to be very, very quick vehicles indeed. The Quattro looking for a way past the Volvo as they round this final corner. There's a Glant in there as well for good measure. We have the big drag race down towards turn 1. Quattro goes very defensive, knowing that that Fiat is coming. No real answer to that as we're going to head 3 wide into the first corner. It's very... You can go around the outside of, well, when it's 2 wide through there. When you're 3 wide, are you really hung out to dry that outside? That's a long way for the little Abarth to go. Couldn't quite make it, but again, it's a cutback on the exit. He's got the speed heading down the next straight, just nowhere to use that speed because there's so many vehicles. It's a big dive from the Fiat. In fact, it's almost 4 wide at one point in all of that as the Gallant, well, kind of less compromised by the fighting, joins in this group almost very, very sideways through the next corner. The Abarth is going to have made that 4 wide work for him. Quattro has a sniff up the inside, will manage to draw alongside as the pair of them get connected. They both bounce, and we're going to go 3 wide for the 3rd time this lap in the next corner. It's quite bonkers racing in this part. I mean, this is not helping them in terms of the cars ahead escaping away, because this sort of battling really will slow you down when you're 3 and 4 wide. The Quattro's wide out of the final corner. The Volvo's very sideways. The Glant's got lost in the final turn, and he's off exploring the scenery. In the end, it would be the Abarth that would come out the best of all of them. That was yeah, pretty... pretty crazy racing from everybody involved, but they all got away with that. It's a good piece of driving from the Abarth to make the most of the opportunity. The field here did get a little bit more spread out in the later stages. Further back, there was a Opel Manta trying to find a way past the Subaru. I was very tempted to build a Manta for these races. They're a car that necessarily had a huge amount of luck to get working in certain classes. It's a brave move from this particular Manta, though, to sneak up the inside at what is a very, very fast corner and manage to make the pass stick. Of course, the all-wheel drive Impreza is going to have that kind of initial launch out of some of these corners as the Manta will slip and slide its way around in places, but at the moment, not quite enough. Speaking of Mantas, there was one still leading the way. We kind of had a bit of a tug-of-war battle between me and the Manta. I would gain on him one lap, I then lose on him the next lap, and then the Alpine came along and flew past me. I made a little mistake that dropped me back, and then it was the Opel's turn to have to try and fend off said Alpine. Neither of us had the speed to really fight with the Alpine, and the Manta was trying his best to cling on to the position, but a wheel on the exit curb would get the Opel sliding, and the Alpine is going to take that opportunity, although again, it's not a completely done deal as we head down towards the first corner. The Manta is going to try and sort of pin the Alpine on the inside so he can't get a good run out of the first corner, but not quite enough grip in that Manta. I had hoped that the two of them fighting might have slowed each other down a little bit more and allowed my Legacy to have caught up, but that was not to quite be the case. This little group would actually continue fighting in the later stages. At some point, the Manta lost out to the Impreza, and in the closing laps, probably the closest battle on track, it was, I think, down for 10th or 11th place, something like that. The Opel able to get up the inside, couldn't quite complete the pass. The Legacy would pounce at any opportunity he can get. However, that Legacy struggling a little bit with a lack of power, isn't able to fight with the Manta in terms of those accelerations. They've got to be careful because it's not that far behind them. There was a Volvo coming to try and join in the fray. The Opel not able to get himself to the inside. Subaru will have a look, have a go. And then this all helps out the Impreza. The more the Manta, of course, is stuck trying to fend off that Legacy, the more the Impreza can kind of run in clean air. The Volvo very much closed up to join this group as they head out of that final corner, but then comes the strength of this Manta. Certainly in this little battle, the Opel with all of the straight line speed would come soaring past the Impreza and make, well, a relatively straightforward pass as he would go and take that particular position. it was an exciting final lap for those guys. For the leaders, well, we ended up relatively close between the top three, but truth be told, the Alpine had come from such a long way back that it only got to the lead with about a lap to go. We'd done what we could to try and fend it off. It just wasn't ever going to be enough, and it would be the Alpine that would go on to take a victory. The Manta in second. I kind of close up a little bit on this final lap with the two of them fighting, but yeah, between me and the Manta, could have been or would have been very, very close race had we not just been a little bit too far apart to start with. However, neither of us really having the pace to compete with that Alpine. So to the podium, Time to Die Zombie would take a victory. Stick Power in second, with me rounding out that top three. Unfortunately, the third race, we had some issues. So I do live record all the races in case we have a replays die. Unfortunately, my live recording for the first race is pretty bloody useless. I started down the back, and on the first lap I had, shall we say, some issues with my cats causing mayhem in my office. I kind of had to chuck the controller down and rescue a cat before it knocked a lot of stuff over, and that ended up with my car bumbling its way into the wall and bouncing off. I apologise to the cars that got wiped out in that particular incident. My car was broken. I was about 3 laps down by the end of it, so nothing of any worth is from my point of view. And I think, although I'm not 100% sure, if the host doesn't finish the race, then people can't save the replay, because nobody was actually able to save the replay at all. It's not that the replay failed, nobody actually could save the replay. For that particular race, it was Invisible AK that would take victory in an Impreza. That guy lolls in second, with Blazer in third. It was a wet race at Suzuka. It looked like a pretty good fun race for a lot of the cars up at the front, and yeah, I apologise to the guys that are that took part in that one. I guess we've learnt something about the host having to finish the race. Otherwise, I assume that's what it is. Otherwise, yeah, the replays can't be saved. And yeah, that's a little bit of a pain. So there we go. We'll blame the cats. It was Amara. She was climbing over Scalextric's boxes and knocking, or about to, and knock a lot of stuff over. So that's it was her fault. That, though, is going to be it for this video. The next Versus the Community is going to be on the 16th of November. We are going to go racing with the Chevrolet Cruze World Touring car, left completely stock and untuned. If you want to sign up and take part in that event, you can via our forums. There'll be a link in the description. Find the FailRace Versus the Community section, and you can sign up in there. However, that's going to be it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.